The Boat, 2018. Movie explained in English. The sea that morning seemed calm, harmless even. A flat sheet of silver blue stretching into the distance beneath a pale gray sky. The fisherman moved with the steady confidence of habit, untying his lines, checking his nets, and coaxing the engine to life with practiced ease. There was nothing unusual about the day, nothing to suggest that the ocean would soon betray him. Yet the sea always carries secrets beneath its surface. And this morning it hid something that had been waiting for him. The gulls circled lazily overhead, calling out in sharp, broken cries as if mocking his routine. The engine coughed and then steadied, its vibrations running up through the deck into his bones. He leaned against the tiller, eyes scanning the familiar waterline, each buoy and ripple known to him by heart. The world seemed ordinary, but the silence behind it was too heavy, too deliberate, like a curtain waiting to drop on a play that had not yet begun. It began with the fog. At first it was nothing more than a blur, a faint haze on the horizon. But within minutes it grew thick and merciless. The horizon vanished. The sky and the water fused into one shapeless wall of white. He frowned, tapped the compass, and watched the needle spin aimlessly. He reached for the radio, but only static hissed back at him, sharp, jagged, but mocking. He slowed the boat, listening for anything beyond the hum of his engine. But all that met his ears was silence. The horn from the headland bellowed in the distance, a mournful groan that carried across the water. It was a sound that demanded respect, a warning from the world of men to stay clear of disaster. He lifted his own horn and answered, more ritual than necessity. But the fog did not part. It pressed closer, folding around his boat until the sea itself felt gone. He was drifting now inside a room with no walls, no corners, no escape. Out of that whiteness, a shadow emerged. At first, it was only a smudge, then a vertical line. Then an entire hull rose before him, dark and immense, towering out of the fog like a building adrift. He cut the throttle, breath caught in his throat. Before him lay a yacht, its portholes blank, its rails slick, its shape too clean and too still to be natural. It did not seem abandoned so much as revealed, as though the fog had chosen this moment to show it to him. Cautiously, he circled. No flag, no name, no movement. His voice cracked as he hailed it, first soft, then louder. The radio spat back only emptiness. Against every instinct that told him to flee, he brought his boat alongside. He tied the line with deliberate care, testing the knot twice, as though ceremony itself might protect him. The yacht did not move. It sat heavy and still, as if the sea held it in invisible chains. He climbed aboard, boots striking the deck with a dull thud. Instantly the air shifted, colder, heavier, pressing on his skin like damp cloth. The deck was too neat. Ropes coiled perfectly, hatches either closed or just ajar, every detail frozen mid-use. A mug rested in the cockpit, a faint ring of tea dried inside it. The fisherman called out, his voice brittle in the silence. The yacht did not answer. It seemed to lean closer, listening. He descended the companionway, hands gripping the rails with nervous strength. The saloon glowed in muted light, varnished with holding its honeyed warmth despite the cold air. Cushions lined the benches, a jacket hung neatly on a hook, books filled their shelf. It was a place abandoned mid-breath, still waiting for its people to return. He whispered a greeting into the silence. But no one came. The galley mocked him with domestic perfection. A kettle stood on the stove as if someone had set it down seconds ago. Plate dried in the rack. In a locker he found sealed crackers, full bottles of water, and an emergency beacon with its green light blinking steadily. Everything ready, everything in order, yet no trace of life. Whoever had left this place had done so without struggle, without fear. That was worse than blood or wreckage. At the NAV station, the charts lay neatly beneath a plastic cover, a ruler placed across them at an angle, frozen in the act of planning. The GPS blinked uncertainly, displaying coordinates that meant nothing in this endless fog. The autopilot wheel twitched back and forth, correcting a drift that didn't exist. The logbook ended calmly, its last line a complete sentence with a tidy period. The absence of panic was more frightening than any desperate scrawl could have been. When he climbed back onto the deck, unease gnawed at him. His own boat still bobbed where he had tied it, faithful and steady. He tugged the rope, checked the knot, whispered solid like a prayer. But the silence was growing teeth. He walked to the bow, touched the anchor chain, and felt it vibrating faintly beneath his hand. Not with the tide's pull, but with a rhythm too steady, too alive, like the muted heartbeat of something vast. He jerked his hand back and laughed nervously. But the sound died immediately in the fog. At the stern, horror gripped him. His boat, the lifeline he had tied so carefully, was drifting away. The rope slipped free, uncoiling like a snake. The knot undone, though he had secured it with certainty. He lunged, fingers closing on empty air, shouting hoarse into the fog. The boat slid farther, swallowed by the white. Within moments it was gone. His only escape had vanished. Panic crashed over him like a breaker. He clung to the railing, knuckles pale, breath ragged. He screamed, his voice splitting with rage and fear. But the fog devoured his words as if they had never existed. The yacht rocked faintly, a cruel reminder that it was his prison now. He stumbled across the deck, flinging open hatches, searching for clues, for proof, for anything to make sense of this nightmare. But every space gave him only silence. The orderliness of it was unbearable. Beds made, coats hung, charts written, everything intact but abandoned. It was not chaos. It was not destruction. It was a museum of absence, carefully curated to keep him from understanding. In the wheelhouse he found the larger radio, its knobs cool under his trembling hands. He twisted them desperately. Static held back, raw and jagged. For one fleeting moment he thought he heard a woman's voice beneath it, faint and pleading. But then it twisted into the wail of wind and collapsed. The silence that followed was heavier than the noise. He fled to the galley again, drawn by the false comfort of supplies. The tins and bottles mocked him, lined neatly like soldiers, waiting to be used. But he could not eat. To touch them felt obscene, as if he were trespassing at a table still set for its owners. He muttered to himself, clinging to his voice, the only sound left that belonged to him. But even his own words seemed swallowed by the yacht, absorbed into its silence. On deck again, he leaned against the rail, eyes straining into the fog. Shapes teased him, lanterns bobbing, figures pacing across the water, shadows larger than ships. Every time he blinked, they melted into nothing. He clutched the steel rail, breath stuttering. The yacht groaned beneath him, not with the sea's rhythm but with the slow, deliberate creak of something alive.